What is up, guys? It is Kitsos from Coasterland, and today we are ranking the top 11 coasters at Six Flags New England. At number 11, we have the Great Chase. This is a E&F Miler kids coaster. It's not really anything special. It's just a kids coaster, so obviously it's ranking last on the list. There are two kids coasters at this park. This is the weaker of the two. Now, it should be noted that it was a little bit fun. I mean, it had a little bit of laterals and no airtime or anything crazy like that. But it was overall a fun ride. So, now let's move on to the number 10 spot. At number 10, we have Catwoman's Whip. Now, Catwoman's Whip is a Sierra Tivoli coaster. Now, this model is the large model. There were really three main models of the Tivoli plus the custom models. There was the small, the medium, and the large. This is the large model. I always enjoy these. They're a little bit of fun. Not too intense or anything, but like they're a little bit of fun for the kids, the whole family. It's not like an intermediate family coaster. It's still a kids coaster, really. But I mean, some of the forces on the back rows are more family coaster level. So, yeah, that's something to consider. The ride features a figure 8 layout, which is actually not a really that bad overall experience. I mean, you know, it is a family coaster, or more of a kids coaster, but I guess I could classify it as a family coaster overall. But the key thing with this one is that you want to ride in the back row, because the back row offers a little bit of force. It's a fun little ride in the back row. It's nothing spectacular, but it is something that, you know, is good for the kids, especially if you have kids. First roller coaster that's a little tiny bit bigger than a true kids coaster, this would be the way to go. And then, of course, work your way up as they get older to the bigger rides. So that's kind of really what I would say to do in that situation. It's not really intense, so the kids can definitely enjoy it, while you have a nice relaxing time on the roller coaster as well. So, you know, it is what it is. It's not that great, but it's not terrible either. So, at the number 9 spot, we have Gotham City Gauntlet Escape from Arkham Asylum. Yes, that is the name of the ride, and yes, I know it is overly long. But the reality is, it's a solid Wild Mouse from Maurer Rides. Now, these wild mice, of course, are a dime a dozen. You can find them at most parks of any significant size. A lot of parks have a wild mouse. It's very common to have one. They're cheap. They're somewhat thrilling. They're a good intermediate thrill coaster. They're easy to maintain. I mean, what more do you want from a coaster, really? I mean, you know, it's something that you can add as an in-between coaster between big investments. It's overall just a smart move for a park to add a wild mouse. As much as some of us enthusiasts are getting sick of them, the reality is they are a smart move for a park, and from a business standpoint, it definitely makes sense. But this ride offers some really solid laterals, and it didn't trim during the first half, basically at all. So that was really fun. It did trim in the second half of the ride, but I mean, to be honest, it's not really that big a deal, so it didn't really affect the ride experience that much. So, coming in at number 8, we have the Joker. I'm not a big fan of these 4D free spin coasters. I find them a little too nauseating and a little too inconsistent, I should say. And the reason I call them inconsistent is because basically this ride has a massive problem with either you get a lot of flips and it's actually not terrible. I mean, it's nauseating, but it's not terrible. Or you don't get any flips at all and you're just like, what the heck did I just ride? Or you're somewhere in between where you're like, it was alright. I mean, it's, you know, it's not really that special an attraction, and it definitely shows throughout the layout that really this was not a major effort by S&S. They definitely didn't put a lot of work into this, and it does show. At the number 7 spot, we have Flashback, the Vekoma Boomerang coaster at the park. Yes, another freaking boomerang. How many do we need? I do believe 60-something was the total number. But the reality is, it's not a terrible ride. I've grown to appreciate what they do. It gives the park a relatively inexpensive, thrilling looping coaster. It's great for small and medium-sized parks. I'm sick of seeing them at big parks because I really think they could have done better. Come on, Six Flags, you can do better. But I'm sure with the merger now, which that's a whole nother topic, we'll see some better investments into these parks. But anyways, Flashback, standard Vekoma Boomerang layout, Cobra Roll loop, backwards loop Cobra Roll. And I do find them very intense, which is a positive. And I do like the intensity of these rides. That is something I'll give them. If they weren't so headbangy, that would be a lot nicer. But to be fair, I've ridden some with the standard over the shoulders, and one even with aero trains that wasn't really bad at all. And I've also ridden a couple with the Vestor trains, which are actually quite fantastic for what they are. So honestly, they can potentially be decent, given the right treatment. At the number 6 spot, yes, number 6, we have Pandemonium. Now, Pandemonium is a Gerstlauer spinning coaster. Gerstlauer built a lot of these for Six Flags. There's quite a few spread out amongst the parks. There's like 4 or 5 out there, maybe even more, but I think it's 4 or 5. It's a standard layout, but to be honest, it's a very fun one. We were unbalanced with Papa not weighing a lot and also not having a riding partner. Me and Brendan from 07 Coasters definitely helped unbalance this attraction because he weighed less than me, and yada yada yada, you get the point. So we spun quite a bit, and it was quite thrilling, and honestly, it was one of the best rides I've had on one of these attractions. So yeah, I rank it pretty high at number 6, just outside the top 5, above some more aggressive rides, simply because it really was a solid attraction overall, and I really did enjoy it. Now, also to note, these things are really smooth, and this was no exception, so that was good as well. Now, breaking into the top 5, we have Thunderbolt, the 1941 PTC wooden roller coaster. Now, this PTC coaster is really good. And I say really good because of one moment on the ride. It has what 07 Coasters likes to call an ejector death hill. I agree, it's an ejector death hill. And that one moment on the ride makes this entire layout fantastic. And overall, it had some good floater, flowjector, and then that one ejector moment on the ride. It was overall great. I mean, it could have been affected that it rained the entire day. So, slick track, the water really can slick up tracks and make them, make coasters run faster. So I really think that affected a lot of the coasters that day, and I'm not sure if they would run quite the same if I were to go back right now on a sunny day and ride them. So I really can't speak to whether or not they would be as good as I remember them, but to be quite frank, they're still... This park has just a fantastic lineup overall, so that's something to note as well. And, it's just another depth coaster that this park has. It's a great Woody, gives the park that wooden coaster that they need. I would like to see a modern Woody here, but to be honest, this definitely does what it needs to do overall. Now, I wish this had buzz bars, but it didn't. It had the PTC individual ratcheting, but overall, it's a fantastic ride. At number 4 will probably be one of the higher ranked SLCs you'll ever see in a park ranking, other than, say, Moray's Piers, and that is, of course, Riddler's Revenge. Now, Riddler's Revenge is a Vekoma suspended looping coaster, 689 meter standard model, and overall, you know, the layout is nothing special, but it's a really intense layout. But what makes this ride a lot better than a lot of the SLCs in America is the vest restraints. Six Flags made a very good decision with doing that. I'm glad they did. And overall, the vest restraints really improve the ride experience. They eliminate the headbanging completely. They make the bumpiness relatively painless, even though it's still bumpy. You don't really have the pain of just jostling around because they're pretty snug, but they're not overly tight. They're not like B&M vests where like they tighten too much. And overall, I love a good SLC when it is actually a good SLC, which is rare to find, but I honestly can appreciate the intense layout of the ride. I mean, that's really the thing for me, is if it has intensity, it has a saving grace. And to make matters better, it had the vest restraints, which made it a significantly better attraction. So, moving on, we have the number 3 spot, which is, drumroll please, Batman the Dark Knight. Now, as 07 Coasters told me that day, since this is one of his home parks, it was running really fast that day. So, could this maybe be ranked a little lower? Maybe, but probably not, because obviously I'm not going to put an SLC in the top 3 of this park. I just can't see myself doing that. But Batman the Dark Knight, what a ride. I mean, it's compact B&M, I mean, which you don't see a lot of. You see a lot of spread out B&Ms that have massive inversions. This really tightens all those inversions up, giving it some extra boost on those positive forces. It really was something that I really could appreciate in the layout. The layout's pretty solid too. It fits 5 inversions into a pretty short track length, so you're just getting rapid fired with inversions, and it definitely helps make the ride a lot more thrilling. It's like one after another, which can be a bad thing, but in Batman's case is quite a good thing. I also love the color scheme of this ride. Like, it really is painted up really nice, and I really did enjoy the ride itself. I mean, very intense for a B&M. Had that roar a little bit. Had the thrill level, the thrill factor. Was probably running faster than normal due to the rain. But you know what? I'm going to call it how I see it. This ride is excellent. Has that loop, then the dive loop as you just saw there. And then it continues through the layout into a really nice and whippy 0G roll. But not too whippy, so you still get that floaty feeling at first. Then the interlocking corkscrews, which is always a great element on B&Ms. You don't see them as often on other manufacturers' coasters, but B&M definitely, since they invented it, uses it a lot, and quite frankly, it's a great element. So, breaking into the top 2, we have an obvious number 2 choice. It is Wicked Cyclone. Now, this RMC coaster is one of the better RMCs. It is definitely one of the best small RMCs I've done, if not the best. I'm still kind of torn, but I think I take Twisted Timbers over this, if you count that as a small RMC, because it has a big personality, but a smaller layout. So, I don't know. I still debate which one is better. I think I take Twisted Timbers, though, because honestly, it's ranked higher on my list. So, yeah, we're going with that. But this is the second best small RMC I've done. Love to get on Untamed at Wallaby Holland just to see how it rides in comparison. But, yeah, the ejector airtime on this ride is fantastic. The stall is great. The other inversions are really nice. They're actually more floaty, which I'm not used to on RMCs as much, but it really works. The third lap does lose speed, but yet it still manages to launch you out of your seat for sure. So it really does everything right. So now moving on to the number 1 spot, and I think you guys could all see this coming. It is Superman, the ride. This intimate hypercoaster, or mega coaster as they like to call it, opened back in 2000, I believe, 99, something like that. And trust me when I say, it has been a great ride from day one. It even won the Golden Ticket Award for the best steel coaster on a couple of occasions. So, back when it had the Intamin T-bars. Yes, it has U-brick restraints now. And yes, I get it. Not the best, most ideal situation. The U-bricks are not the best restraints, but I actually was not as bothered by them as a lot of people are. I found that as long as you hold them up or give yourself the appropriate amount of room, they don't come down that hard. They are heavy restraints, but they're not terrible. They're definitely bulky, but that does not take away from the ride, in my opinion, because overall, this ride is just that good. I mean, airtime, positives, a little bit of laterals, more airtime, more positives, more little bit of laterals. I mean, this ride really does a lot well. And what's even more impressive is at its age, it's so smooth. Like, how, Intamin, how? You have all these rattly coasters, like, you know, Superman or Ride of Steel. Sorry, it's not named Superman Ride of Steel. It's just Ride of Steel at Darien Lake. That's a very rattly hypercoaster. And then you have this ride, which is just an absolute masterpiece. It's butter smooth. It's profiled a little weird. If you look at the profiling on this ride, it definitely is a little bit different than what you're used to on a modern coaster. But it rides really smooth. It looks a little weird. Looks a little off, but overall, it is just a fantastic ride. You have that overbank there that's really good for the turnaround. It's right by the river, too, which really adds to it. And then you just get launched on these airtime hills. That one's good, but the next one right here, that one is insane. That airtime moment is awesome. Then you kind of enter a spaghetti bowl section, and I really love the spaghetti bowl section because it just offers a lot of positive G's mixed with airtime to kind of give you a slight reprieve from just getting bone-crushing positives. So overall, Superman the Ride is a clear #1 choice in this park, and I absolutely adore this ride. It was at one point my #1 coaster. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click that like button down below. And remember to subscribe for more awesome videos here on Coasterland.